It's really great to see engineers in the Bazel community create and open source more tools that enable Bazel's adoption and usability. Next talk will focus on an open source tool created by Salesforce for Bazel Build Event visualization. I'd like to introduce Peter Laird, who is a long-standing Bazel evangelist and open source contributor and a principal engineer at Salesforce. Welcome.
So I'm going to talk about a feature of Bazel. If you're already using Bazel, it's maybe a new feature you can pick up and use. And if you're not already using Bazel, you should migrate, and this might be another good reason to migrate. It's a feature not used by your end users, but it's a way to integrate tools into the Bazel build. And so that's what I'm going to cover today. Just briefly about me and my team that I work on at Salesforce. We do Java microservices. We support service development instead of Salesforce, and so among other things, we provide a shared monorepo that is built with Bazel, and so we've been using Bazel for a few years with that. And so as part of that, we've open sourced a number of tools that we have developed for ourselves internally. We have PalmGen, which allows us to export Bazel built libraries out to Maven repositories. We have Rules Spring, which enables you to build Spring Boot applications in Bazel. We have the Bazel Eclipse feature, which is IDE support for Bazel, really for Java developers, and for Eclipse. And we've been doing that for a couple of years. The SDK I'll cover in the next slide, and then Rules Slack was the project that helped motivate the topic of today. And that's an integration with Bazel with Slack, such that we have fine-grained build notifications funneling up to Slack, and that'll be open source soon. Just couldn't get the legal process through in time for this this conference. And just a word about the text. I'm going to cover it, or I'm going to talk about it, or at least refer to it a number of times. The way this started was we first started building Bazel Eclipse, and frankly, most of Bazel Eclipse is Bazel code. So it's looking inside your build and building class paths off of your Bazel information and feeding that to Eclipse. So most of, I would say 90% of the Bazel Eclipse project is really just Bazel. And so we abstracted that out, and that's now a new top level open source project that the SDK is. And so it just provides a lot of APIs for you to quickly interact with the Bazel build inside of Java code. And I use that to get build events up from our Bazel build and up to Slack for the Slack for Bazel project. And we also, another team in Salesforce is working on a Java language server for Bazel, and they are also using the SDK. So it's out there. It's we encourage people to try it. And it has BEP, so Build Event Protocol, BEP. It has BEP support now as of a few weeks ago because of the Slack for Bazel project. So that's the background. It's the context for build events is not for building or writing custom rules that work inside your build. The motivation for using build events is for integrating tools outside of your build into your build. So that's really what you should be thinking of when you think of build events. And the great thing about Bazel is there's like 6 different ways you can integrate tools in your build. And so Bazel Eclipse actually uses all of them except for the build events protocol. We might be switching some of Bazel Eclipse to use it. But there are things like built-in commands. There's Bazel query, Bazel aspects. You can parse standard out, standard error. You can monitor the file system. The SDK does all those things. But the focus of the talk today is on the build events protocol, which I'll cover next. So it's a really useful feature of Bazel, and what it does is there are 24 event types defined for the event protocol, and they're really fine-grained. And so you can get a lot of great information out of your build as you're doing a build or a test run. And so it's essentially just a stream of events that come out, and I'll show you some numbers of taken from our build about how many events come out, and there are a lot. So so that's in a nutshell what the build event protocol is. And then now I'm going to cover some of the specifics. And so the best way to do that is just start looking at some of the standard event types. The 20 event types, I've personally only used maybe 8 or 10. There's a ton of them, but for most applications, I think you're probably only going to find 6 or 8 useful for your use case. But this one is a build started event, so you get this at the beginning of your build, and not a ton of information in here, but it does tell you what command was executed and when it was executed. And you could get excited about the options there that you see there, but don't worry, there's actually like 3 or 4 events that provide a lot of details about what the user has configured in their environment, in their Bazel RC file, and other things. So Build Event Protocol is very rich with configuration information. So for external tools, useful. So an example use of this event could be sending a Slack notification on a CI system when a build is started. Maybe there's a huge build that takes a few hours. Maybe you want to send out a notification. You could do that with that event. The second one, like I was saying, there's actually a whole collection of events that that describe the execution environment. This is just one of them. So another idea for this type of event would be maybe you're having trouble supporting all your users on their workstations with all their different configurations, and maybe you centralize all their configuration information such that you could easily troubleshoot. The next one is the pattern event, which is really interesting. It's there, like I said, there's 6 different ways you can integrate with Bazel. It's a very powerful tool, and normally you could query. You could use Bazel query to get dependency information for like a wildcard pattern here, like the user here entered in Bazel build // ... and in BEP, you can resolve that with the pattern event. It'll tell you all the things that resolved based on that pattern. Another one you get a lot, but they're not super useful, is the target configured. So that just means for every target that your build is going to touch, you'll get one of these events. The good thing about this event is you do get a target kind, so you might want to aggregate that information somehow. There's target. So this starts to get to, I think, the more interesting events, because this is stating that the build was successful for that particular target, and the output was, for example, the foo.jar file in this case, and the success was true, so it completed. And so once again, you're getting these build events as they stream, so it's not waiting until the very end of the build. And so if you have a use case, for example, where you want to be able to stream the built artifacts out of your build in real time, this could be a good event for you. Test results, very important for a lot of use cases. And so in this case, we have a failed test, and it gives you the file path to the log file that gives a nice clean error description of what happened. So for example, if you want to publish a notification to Slack, this is a good event to listen for, and then just take that contents of that file and paste it up into the Slack message. There's also an XML form of the test log, so if you want something more structured, you could do that. So we're still on Bazel 3, so our build metrics, there's not a lot there, but it's my understanding that more build metrics are coming in later versions of Bazel. But as you can see here, there's some interesting data already, CPU time in milliseconds, heap size, etc. And so now we get to the crazy ones. So most or really all the events are well structured. Once you see one event of that type, you kind of know what they look like. The progress event is it's the crazy one. So it's pretty much just pasting in. So you get a ton of progress events as your build progresses. You'll get all these things being spit out, and they just contain essentially standard out and standard error. And so it's whatever is happening at that given time. And so in the SDK, we have some limited support for these. We parse the string and strip out the weird characters. But there is structure inside of these, but it's kind of hard to see. And as you can see, every progress event is very different from every other. This was a build error, so it would be really nice to be able to pull out the file where there's a compile error, but it's going to take some work to parse that. So we're on the SDK. We have very limited support so far. That's something we hope to improve. So that's just a summary of what Bazel events, the build event protocol events look like. The way you consume them is by adding something to your Bazel RC file. There's two protobuf approaches. So with the SDK, we don't allow any dependencies on third-party libraries. So protobuf and especially gRPC wasn't an option. But but if gRPC or protobuf is the way you want to go, you can do that. Or you can have Bazel output the events in JSON. That's what we do. And so you just put these lines in your Bazel RC file and you're off and running. Just in terms of scale, some numbers I've captured from our repository with 325 packages, 3,000 targets, 12,000 actions, that leads to 13,000 events. And then on a test run, we have 1,200 test classes, that's 15,000 events. So just to give you an idea, like you have to be pretty specific about what you're looking for in your events. And I think we have, I'm gonna eat into the Q&A time a little bit, but so with the SDK, there's a sample app that shows you how to get up and running with the build event protocol. And so here I'm going to be reading in a test JSON file. So this was a JSON file with VEP events that were generated during a test run. And I hook up a subscriber as we parse the events, and then we activate the stream, which then sends all those events through the subscriber. And the subscriber is mostly just going to print out each event that it receives. And then for a test result failure, we're going to do something special. So just to show you this is just a sample app. You can do whatever you want with it, but you just pass as an argument your workspace where you had run your tests and produce that JSON file. And then the SDK parsed all those events into proper model objects, and then that special case logic there saw that there was a test result event and output the information that it got from that. So this build was really short on purpose for a demo, but like I said, normally when you run a Bazel build on a medium-sized repository, you're going to have thousands, if not tens of thousands of events. So be prepared, buckle up. It's you have a lot of sorting out to do to find what you need. And I think that's it. Are there any questions?
All right. Well, we'll wait for a few more questions from the audience. We still have some time before the next panel, so feel free to ask. And yeah, definitely great to see more work in the build events protocol space. I'm curious about the size of these files and again, kind of scalability and any kind of concerns that you may have hit.
That's a question. I can find out real quick. Well, so with JSON, so yeah, you have file size issues, but for us, it's not that big a deal. And then of course there's protobuf if that's a more efficient way to store them, but it's a little harder to bring it back in and parse it. But yeah, we in our limited experience with the Slack integration, it's been a great solution for us. It provides the information that we need, and yeah, what's great about it is it's in real time. Like it, as the build is progressing, you're not waiting until the end of the build to get all the stuff. It's coming at you as the build proceeds.
All right. We've got one question that just came in. So is there any way to add metadata, for example, owner, team, app name, to tests to make it come out in the events?
Maybe. I don't know, I guess is the right answer, but I don't know. I think it's so there's a proto file out there that has the schema for all of the events, and so that's your reference. So there might be a way to put in tags or something and have those come through, but I'm not sure on like test result events. There's also a test summary event. I'm not sure if you can find a way to send things through and get those onto the events. Good question.
All right. That's all we've got so far in terms of questions. We'll give it another 30 seconds and wrap up the session, give people another 5-minute quick break before the next session, which will be the last session for the day before the closing remarks. All right. Thank you, Peter. Really, really great to see more open source tools available in the space.
Thank you.